In this lesson, we're going to be talking about password policies. Previously, we'd actually used the password command to set a password for a user. Now we want to make sure that we're actually enforcing a password policy that's going to keep our users safe. We're going to go into the Etsy directory again, and we're going to look at a file called login.defs. Right here towards the bottom of the screen now, and I'm just going to scroll up so it's a little bit higher, you can see the password aging controls. At the moment, the maximum number of days a password is going to be used as 99,999, which effectively means you're going to keep the same password forever. What I probably want to do is make this something that's a little bit more reasonable. And so let's just set that to 120. The minimum number of days between password changes, 0 meaning I could change as often as I want. Well, I probably want to keep a password for a certain period of time, let's say 7 days. The minimum length I'm going to say is 8, and the worn age, the number of days warning before a password expires, is 7. That's fine. So we're going to write this out, and now I've got a password policy in terms of how long you can keep a password, how often you have to rotate the password. What I also need to do is I need to go change the policy around the type of password I can actually use. So I'm going to edit the system.auth file. And what I'm looking for is the password down here. Now, I've got the cracklib, which is a library that tries to set policy around how long a password is, the type of characters that you're going to use. I'm actually going to get rid of this. And then I'm going to put another line in its place here. In this case, you can see I'm actually going to get rid of this because I don't need the indication of where the file actually lives. PAM knows. PAM is the pluggable authentication module, and it takes care of handling authentication. I can put a number of modules in to handle different types of authentication. I can put in parameters around how I'm going to do authentication. In this case, I'm going to use cracklib to actually check the password to make sure it has some certain criteria. I am only going to allow a retry of 3 times. My minimum length is going to be 8. I get a password that has to have at least one uppercase letter. That's the -1 here with U credit. L credit is -1. That says it's got to have at least one lowercase letter. So I've got a mixed case password now. I've got a D credit of -1 that says I've got to have a number, and then an O credit is a special character. So now I've got a mixed case password with a number and a special character that has to be at least 8 characters long. That seems like a reasonable password policy. Of course, you can tighten it up if you want. We could make things like you have to have at least 2 special characters. You could have multiple digits, and you could tighten it down as much as you want. You could have a minimum length, for example, of 15 to enforce password phrases rather than simple passwords. But this is going to be fine for what we need here, so I'm going to write this out. Now we've got a reasonably strong password policy that is not so stringent that it's going to be onerous on the part of the user. There's always a balance when it comes to password policies. If you make them too strong, people are going to find ways around them. Even it's as simple as writing the password down, which is, of course, something we don't want our users to do. If you make your password policy too strong, they're going to resort to things like writing the password down just so they can keep up with remembering it. The human brain really isn't designed to remember passwords. Passphrases maybe a little bit better if you could remember a short sentence that had some variation in terms of the characters that are in it. But we're really just not wired to keep rotating passwords every 30 days, 60 days, and keep, a list of 15 passwords in our head at all times that we've kind of iterated through. So having a reasonable password policy that balances the security of your system with the needs of your users so you're not compromising the system because of the things they're doing to get around the password policy, it's a really good thing to keep in mind when you're doing these password policies. But we looked at the login.defs file, and then in pam.d, which is the pluggable authentication module, we looked at the system auth file, and that's how we actually set the password policy.